Chris Hare, thanks for joining. So,
Hi.
Chris, ABM Maestro, also currently COO of ABMA, the ABM agency, which tells me two things. You're organized and you get stuff done. So, firstly, God, I need you in my life. Prior to that, you've worked at some huge companies like MOI, I call them, but MOI Global and Wonderman, which also tells me you're very creative. So, big respect there, or potentially. But my favorite part about you, Chris, sprinkled in amongst all this beauty, is you are mad enough to go out on your own, freelancing and doing your own thing and consulting and helping companies with ABM. So, lot to cover there, but let's start there. How would you define yourself? Let's put parameters on that professionally, shall we say? And how did you end up in the ABM sphere?
Okay, got a big question to start with. I've been in B2B marketing for 25 years, more than I would admit to, maybe slightly more than 25. I've predominantly in that time worked with technology companies, but in the last 2 or 3 years started to really expand that out into industrial, chemical, medical, manufacturing, all of those spaces that I'm sure your audience here will be interested in that it's not the typical ABM client. They have in the past been hardware, software, security, telecoms. There's a lot more industries out there, and they are all looking for that ABM expertise, of which I've landed on right now. During my career, lots of data-driven marketing. It used to be called direct mail. It was then called analytics and data strategy, and now I call it account-based marketing. Though in the end, it's all just about good marketing and targeted marketing.
Nice. So this is all right. I'm even more excited now because you are right. Like we do, and no heat to anyone else, but like yes, I do talk to a lot of ABMers that are marketing SaaS products and things. So this is going to be very, very interesting to see how your takes differ. So Chris, what I've done for this session is we're almost bringing it back to the basics, the core elements, which is good, and then we can drill down and expand as we go. If I can keep up with you, that is. But challenge one is around sales and marketing alignment. So the reason I always put this one in, or some degree, and we've had Pierre van der Fusten, who runs ABM at Adobe. I'll frame it this way. He asked if there's one thing you could change about how sales and marketing work together, what would it be? But maybe perhaps start with like what your core process of aligning marketing and sales is traditionally, if you have a standardized process.
I, I don't think there is a standardized process because it just depends on the organization. We come across actually more and more frequently clients that have already got sales buy-in, which is a good step forward from maybe where we were 5 years ago, when that was the first question, and we had slides, endless slides in a deck saying you need to get salespeople involved, and it was like, oh, light bulb, that's a good idea. Now they're involved typically from the beginning, and if they're not, then our advice often is then let's not start the program, because we call it account-based marketing, but it really is account-based sales through marketing. So yeah.
Is there any okay, another way to frame this? So tying in with Pierre's question, are there any blind spots that you see or any big faults when it comes to sales and marketing alignment? What are like the big hiccups? Where's the friction typically?
Yeah, I think the thing that jumps to mind when you ask that question is in our initial calls with a marketing team, we often get asked the question, how much time does our sales team need to devote to this? And I wonder if there lies part of the problem, that we're thinking about their time as a short resource or a limited resource on something like this. Whereas if we've sold it in right and we're working with them correctly, it should be as much time as they're willing to give it based on the value that it can provide. Because we're often talking to salespeople who might spend the rest of their week going after limited opportunities that are quite cold. We're trying to deliver a handful of very, very warm, long-term, high lifetime value opportunities. So I wonder if sometimes it's when that question is asked, that's where the problem starts. Is, you know, yes, we can start a workshop with a sales team, and it can take a few hours. But equally, if we've got this right and we've pitched it right within the business, it should be a hand in glove relationship with sales. It doesn't mean that they have to devote tens of hours a week, but they should be willing, as it grows and as these opportunities grow, they should be excited. They should be asking my time, our time, rather than us asking theirs.
That's I'm really conscious of time already, but that's a really, really good point that I don't think anyone's addressed yet. And like I feel a bit blessed that I've been on both fronts, right? Like the marketing side, the sales side, but also I've heard or had like unrealistic expectations put on me as like a salesperson to follow up with X amount of accounts. And if you really want to do that to a high level, it does require a lot of time. And we had Vasilios on talking about if you want to scale ABM, realistically, you need to just scale your headcount because you want to keep that human personalized touch in there. And from what I took from what you're saying, like that, the balance of marketing almost need to understand as well how long a sale, because it's easy for us to spin up landing pages now, AI and all this stuff. Hey, we've given you all the assets, but actually like that deployment, that mutual respect there when it comes to people's time and how long things take. I don't think that gets talked about enough. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. This is going to be good. Any more on that? Or
I wanted to add one more point on that. I think once you start working through this process with sales and marketing together, and you have those regular conversations, and you become part of their flow and their working week, that's when the really good stuff happens. So if you just follow a plan, a methodology that says, once a week we'll have a status report with sales, and you follow that, you don't quite get the success that you'd like. When you start to have salespeople who know when they hear something, they hear there's an opportunity, that somebody's moved, there's an RFP that's been mentioned. When they're coming to us, that's when it really starts to happen. And I've seen that countless times in the last 2 years, where the salespeople are actually coming to us rather than us feeding them information, and then we're able to help them respond, which ultimately is what we're there for. What we say is we're there to be what you would do if you had unlimited time, resource, and budget.
Well, that's like the ABM Nirvana. I think you cracked it. It's like inbound requests on a sales front. It's the same thing for us. Right, we must persevere. Challenge 2, ABM objectives. So I like to frame this question of obviously it depends on where you're at as an organization, and but if you're new to ABM, for example, where would you suggest, how would you suggest thinking about your objectives and kicking things off? How do you prove that it works, so to speak?
Okay, I think there's 2 questions there. So what would I start out with? I think rather than give you all of the answers to that, because they will be personal and they will be bespoke based on the organization, I think it's important to understand what it's not and what the objectives shouldn't be. And then you can start to find the white space where it actually is. So the things that I think it's not, I don't think it's an extension of your lead generation campaign. So it's not a slightly more expensive or slightly more targeted version of your existing lead or demand generation program. It is a very different investment of time and effort. And hence the account selection should reflect that. The time that sales put into it should reflect that. But it isn't just an extra layer, a glossier layer on top of lead generation. And I think that it's important to say that, because that comes up, and that's how it's laid out in multiple PowerPoint charts that clients will come to or get to or have potentially proposed by other partners. The way we see it is it has to be its own thing. It is not an extension of your existing program. It's its own program in one.
I've said this before on the show. I always give bonus points to marketers that also have that frame of mind of defining what things aren't. I almost think it's more powerful because there's more things that isn't than it is. So it really kind of helps set the objectives. Okay, there's a nice golden bit of nugget. Challenge 3. Aha, selecting target accounts. Right. I've spoken to big enterprise, like we had James on the show. I hope he doesn't mind. Well, he said it publicly on the show that he works at Blue Yonder. They're using spreadsheets. We've had small startups being really techie with like all their data inputs and like using Keyplay and things like that. But what is your process for selecting target accounts? And again, I'm probably making this too simple with what's your standard process. It probably depends on the client you work with, I'm sure.
Yeah, so I'll try not to repeat that. It is bespoke. It does depend. Again, there are things that it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be that there are accounts that we think we'd like to win, therefore put those on the list. It should be very clear in itself as to whether it is a net new program or a customer upsell, cross-sell, white space program. Typically, and I think probably most people who've been on your show would say the same thing. Those upsells, cross-sells are really where ABM plays very strongly, particularly if you're looking for a return on investment in a short period of time. It doesn't mean to say that ABM can't be used over a slightly longer period of time to win and acquire new clients. Always depends on the deal size, on the sales cycle, and everything is very much dependent on those two variables. Everything that we'll talk about. How do we recommend customers select accounts? Probably all the things that most of my peers have said to you. We should be looking at sales intelligence, so that comes from the sales team, what's going on out there already. We should be looking at research and intelligence, intent, in order to feed that. But we should also be doing, I think, the third thing, which doesn't always get done, which is looking very clearly at the value proposition that we have and saying, how does that match best to which accounts? Because you can't sell, if you've got a very clear value proposition, you can't sell it to everybody in the same way. There will be certain accounts that make perfect sense to you, where you can play better against the competitors than others can. So it's not just about the data. It's not just about the gut feel. It is about, let's be really honest about where your product can succeed and which clients it can succeed with.
That's really an awesome point. Well, two things on what you've just said, and it kind of ties in with the previous question. You mentioned like account expansion, a good use for ABM, and maybe that's how you should select your target accounts. I often think back to the objectives when ABM comes up. Like, should we do ABM? Like 90% of people that start with it always assume net new, maybe, and actually that's a good starting point in terms of like existing customer expansion is a great use case, as you said. The second point, oh God, I always do this. I talk and then I forget. It's like I erase in my head. No, I wish I started with the second point. I felt like it was more important. What was the last?
I was talking about
jog my memory.
I was talking about aligning the value proposition, what you've actually got, what you're really good at, with what people want.
There we go.
Which is sometimes forgotten. It's like marketing 101, but we forget it. We've kind of forgotten that because we've got this new glossy thing called ABM, so we don't need to do that anymore, but we do.
For sure. And we were at the Sixth Sense conference last week, and I got a lot of respect for user-led. Great team there, and I was just seeing like the updates for their platform and like how they can customize landing pages. And one of the features there was using the AI to match like your messaging, your value prop with your target's account, like kind of messaging there, and literally like merging the language or like crossing parallels there. And I think I've already started to incorporate that because I didn't really think about that when I create custom landing pages. I probably should just use user-led at this point. But yeah, very, very good little tactic there.
Yeah,
not even a tactic, as you say. It's a core principle, really.
It's a core principle and something that we forget. I've just, before this call, finished a recommendation to a client, and they've kind of rounded up on the fact that they've got 3 very large customers that they'd like to do account-based marketing to. But as I've analysed them, they're all relevant, but one of them is streets ahead in terms of what their requirement is, where they are, what their needs are, meets our value proposition. So I've said put 60% of your budget into that one, put the other 2 into the remaining 40%. So it is important to understand who's in market, of course, but also who's really needing what you do. And if you are in a position where, and this is the same for all marketing, if you think you can do everything perfectly, then you're probably missing the point. There will be strengths that meet needs, and if you can put those two things together, the ABM will work better.
Yeah, and what you said there, that's personally why I love ABM. You're going straight for the jugular. You just need one of those to close, and everyone's super happy. Yeah. Right. Okay. A challenge for account research. So you've selected your target accounts. This is going to, all of these questions depend, right? Just to give everyone some context between if it's one to many, one to few, one to one, or whatever you want to bracket it up as. But like, I don't know, what's your favorite type of ABM? And then let's dive deep into that. Is it one to few? So I think Vincent mentioned one to few was pretty big at ABMA, but
yeah, I mean, we focus, we do the whole range, because you often have to do that in order to create a context and an awareness at the one-to-many level. You have to do it, but we're not going to get any revenue. To your point, we're not going to be ruthless and win those accounts unless we've got the one-to-one activity. And in order to get to the one-to-one, we probably need to surround it with some one-to-few. So yes, our favorite is absolutely in that one-to-few and one-to-one space, because if it's not in there, then it is just that extension of your current lead generation program. And it's going to the waters are going to get very murky. We're here to look at a very small number of accounts, try and identify which ones can be pushed through to a sale and move them through. And that's not going to be different to a lot of good ABM agencies out there, but it's where we're specializing at the moment. So looking at real pipeline at that spiky end of the funnel, that sharp end of the funnel.
So with that, then where's the edge? Where's the leverage in the research piece before kicking off a campaign like that? Like, is there or is it like just run of the mill kind of like what? Yeah, I don't know how I'm trying to phrase this question. Is there anything kind of like unique you do that you believe when it comes to like looking into your target accounts? Do you dig deep? How do you kind of like batch up content or themes and ideas?
Well, I can't tell you the unique stuff, because then people won't need to
secret sauce
speak to us. I think, but that aside, I think the tools are all out there at the moment to do as much research as you want to. I'll go back to one of my previous points. It's about finding the gaps and where you're matching your clients, rather than understanding in a 600-page War and Peace account dossier everything that they do. It's about finding the tensions and the gaps, the things that you can fill, and that tends to be how we do it. We have what we call a strategic ideation process, something that we call Spark, that is often looking to ask the provocative questions, like what should this not be, what will not work, in order that we can find the opposite of all of those things. And that sounds quite a basic way to look at it, but if you ask the questions, what's the best way to do this, and what's the best type of program for this, then you're open to exploring all of the obvious avenues. When you think about what's the worst way to do it, what's the least successful route going to be, and then you try and flip it, you tend to get some more provocative answers to provocative questions.
I'm loving this. Sorry, carry on, Chris.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, so I'm not sure if I've answered your question about research, but it's about looking for the information that's in the shadows, not the obvious information. Of course, you need all of that in order to write it, but what's the bits that is needs to be addressed, that other strategies that are just looking at the obvious will miss.
So what I love about kind of everything that you've been saying is you're playing devil's advocate to like your own ideas a lot of the time. It sounds like, I might be wrong, and you flip
Yeah.
things on the head. In fact, this is like my favorite rapper, Ren. He often does this like wordplay. Anyway, weird kind of comparison there. But this the last few weeks, we with one client, I've done something similar where I think AI can scrape absolutely any public information, all of this sort of stuff. And I'm helping a law tech company kind of break into some target accounts. And it's around kind of sponsorship, all that stuff. There is a basic level stuff out there on like Companies House, that stuff. But what I did was literally emailed the home office and they gave you numbers. I can't remember what the term's called. There's an actually specific process of it, but it's like a request for information which you can get out of them, for which it's just not publicly available, and that you can use it. Anyone can request the information, but it is about like what you're saying, going that extra distance. And I'm sure, like, just to kind of give like a practical example to what you're saying, I'm sure within every industry there's probably like a governing body or like an institution, or there are pockets, like you said, in the shadows is a nice way to put it, of information that companies can leverage, because then you can start your emails and things with, this is a very well researched outreach, or like this, or worded better than that, and then give the specifics, and they're like, oh, how did you get that kind of concept?
Yeah, I agree. And look, let's not minimize the importance of that headline or that subject header in an email or a connection request. It tends to get lost in the volume of things that we can create. That email subject header, that LinkedIn connection request, if it's full of insight, that's the thing that's going to get 80% of the people to open something. In a world where we know everyone's drowning in emails, in messages, giving yourself a better chance at that opens up all the doors. And so, yeah, that kind of relates to what I said about research. You can have as much research as you want, but you're going to need to put the most interesting thing in the subject header of the first email. Otherwise, you're already behind the schedule.
Absolutely. And to go a bit off piece, because I've got strong beliefs at this at the moment, and I'm just curious to hear your thoughts, is like there's 3 tiers to personalization in my head. You've got tier 3, which is industry, tier 2 account, and then tier 1 you can like personalize to the individual. I built my career off email originally. I'm almost kind of like vetoing all personalization that is like scraped to some degree now. It's like I feel like the users are getting so savvy that, if they've picked. I once answered, for example, an email because they were like, they recognized that I once ran a paintball arena in festivals around the country. And I was like, wow, that's like, how did you know that? But then like, a couple of years later, I'm now going, I can remember that, I don't know who it was, but I remember they picked that out, like that bit of personal information out for me, but I didn't remember it. It wasn't contextually relevant to my job. So like when it comes to personalization for me anyway, and this comes back to the research piece, I am focusing just on like that tier 2, tier 3 aspect, and I could be way wrong. But yeah, I feel like to do a full 360 loop of what we've just said, like you want it in the subject line, you want it as like the first message. I almost feel like tier 1 personalization can almost be too creepy. We've had Henry on the show twice actually, and he said he once closed a deal by finding out that a CISO owned like a pig farm in like Herefordshire or something on Twitter. And I'm like, that's great, but like risk rewards, like how long did that take for you to find? And then how often does that work? That was a lot of words. I'm so sorry, Chris. I don't know if you've got a view on personalization, because the next question is content creation that I do want to get to.
Yeah, I think on personalization, you're your best and your only focus group, really. What emails are you opening? Have a think about that. Ask people around you that you know are different personalities to you. Which ones are they opening, if they're opening any? Because we have to be realistic, and lots of people don't at all. And so sometimes that ultra personalized thing can work. Sometimes it doesn't. I do think as long as there's some insight and there's an offer, there's an offer of real value, like something that is not just, do you want to join a call and I'll go through a half an hour credits deck with you. If there's some sort of offer of value already on the table in that email, then typically, as long as I'm not having a terrible day, I might at least consider responding to that one.
You've been getting those emails too then, huh?
Oh yeah, all 5 million of them.
Just today. Right, conscious time. Engagement channels, again, depends on the company that you're working at. But if you had to
Yeah,
prioritize three channels, like your three favorite channels, like your core channels, what would you
yeah,
pick and why?
yeah. Um, Along the same lines of the other answers I've given you, I'll not answer your question and I'll reframe it. I think the obvious core channels, which you have to consider because they do reach the volume, they can get to the number of people that you need to get to, although not always successfully. You do need to still consider email, but you have to do it in a smarter way, in a more insightful way, with an offer like I've just suggested. LinkedIn can still work, but there are tactics and touch point flows that work better than just trying to cold connect and cold sell through that channel. And of course, you do need to be in a digital space in the right places with really good, strong creative advertising, strong messaging that really will resonate. And all of those things sound obvious. No one's trying to do the opposite of those things. So you do still have to have those in place. What we are trying to do at the moment, because we've seen email response rates decline even in the last 6 months, month by month, it's getting harder and harder. We're using a lot of other channels. We're using direct out of home. So we're advertising within office spaces, buildings where our clients and prospects are. We're using CTV. So we're trying to appear in their natural TV viewing. We're using events and a variety of other tactics that we're growing all the time because we do know if we don't get ahead of this, email response rates are going to be so low this time next year. There's going to have to be a replacement for that in the funnel.
Yeah, which is sad, bittersweet, but also kind of a blessing. I think it's needed to some degree.
Yeah,
Something's got to stop.
absolutely. Or we
Question.
just all stop using email. I think if we don't.
We
Yeah.
can go back to carrier pigeon or something. Right, very quickly. Question 7. Is the MQL dying? It came in from Chris Rack at Mockingbird. Or is it
Yes.
still relevant?
Yes. This time.
RIP? Like any reason? Justification?
No, I thought I just like dropped the mic on yes. Yeah.
We can edit it. We can edit a mic drop in with an explosion or something.
Look, it still means something somewhere, particularly within a lead gen, demand gen program. It doesn't mean much to me in terms of ABM. If we're running ABM properly in MQL, what that really is, someone's downloaded something, someone's given their details. That's only part of an account score that we'd look to build into what we'd call a marketing qualified account, an MQA. So yes, it's dead. Long live the MQA.
Chris is getting obliterated because Chris is pro MQL, and like I can see his point, and like I kind of like am for it still slightly, but like every other person I've asked is just getting butchered. Anyway, Chris, we can pick that up at some point. Just for fun, we invent a lot of technology or workflows, just like from a technical standpoint, to help ABMers and marketers. Do you have an invention or anything that you would like to, or like an idea that you wish existed?
What in
It could be a smart
ABM
fish.
or
It could be a smart fridge. It could be a smart toilet. I don't know as well, but like ideally ABM.
if somebody takes the idea and invents it, do I get some of the money?
I can't promise that, can I? So we can also keep it stern.
My idea has always been: can you get a razor that's molded to your face, so you just do this, and it takes all the hair off in one go?
Oh my god, I butcher I'm bleeding out all the time when I shave this part. Oh, that would actually be a godsend. You probably, there'd be no need for razors. Right, Chris, last question is, do you have a question for our next guest?
Yeah. Okay. What do you think the top 3 channels will be in 18 months' time for ABM?
Ooh, okay, forecasting. I like that a lot. How would I answer that question? we don't often get questions like that, which are kind of like forward thinking. It's often like retrospective looks. So that'd be interesting to ask a few people. But Chris,
I'd like to hear the answer, because it's what we all need to crack, don't we?
Yeah, no one knows. Well, like back to what we were just saying, maybe we're all going to get burnt out from tech and literally go back to just in-person meetings. I think there's a lot of stuff going around on LinkedIn at the moment, like Mark Cuban saying that. It's like they call it the Manili. I don't know who that person is, but like an effect where it's like we've all become numb to like digital stuff, and it's all going to like swing back to like reps going out, meeting people, and things like that. But it'll be interesting to see. Chris, thank you so much for joining.
Pleasure. Really nice to speak to you. Hope it was of some use to somebody.
So much use.